Good day, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for the Intacct product tour. My name is Vijay Ramakrishnan, and I'm joined by my colleague Linda Pinion today. And what Linda and I are going to do is survey some of the challenges and issues that organizations can run into with their financial management processes and show you how Intacct's cloud ERP solution can automate key processes for finance and deliver strategic value. In terms of the specific agenda, I'll start with a brief introduction to Intacct, but the main feature of today's webinar is going to be Linda's demonstration of Intacct. Before we get into the heart of today's session, I wanted to cover a few housekeeping points with you. We want to make this session as valuable to you as possible. So if you have questions about what you're seeing, please feel free to enter that into the chat box, and we will get back to you with answers as soon as we can. We'll also be sending you a copy of this presentation and a recording of this webinar, so you'll have that for your reference. And as you exit the webinar, if you could take a few minutes to fill out the survey at the end, that will help us make these kinds of webinars and product tours even more valuable to you as we go forward. So let's start with some quick introductions. As I said, my name's Vijay Ramakrishnan, and I'm with Intacct. And part of my role at Intacct is to speak with our customers and understand how they're applying Intacct's technology to gain value both from a day-to-day perspective as well as from a long-term perspective, and being able to play a more strategic role by leveraging Intacct's technology. But speaking of technology, I wanted to introduce you now to Linda Pinion, and I'm going to hand the floor over to you, Linda, to tell the audience a little bit about yourself and what you do for Intacct.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Vijay. As Vijay mentioned, we're colleagues here at Intacct, and my role at Intacct is to provide a solution demonstration around solving business requirements. Just like Vijay, I work a lot with our prospects and our existing customers to understand what types of challenges and issues that they're having, and then craft a solution presentation back to them. Today, that's exactly what I'm going to do in this storyboard. So, Vijay, I'll turn it back to you.
Great. Thank you, Linda. So just to give everyone in our audience a little bit of more specifics on the agenda, I'm going to start with a brief introduction to Intacct, and then Linda and I are going to review a scenario based on a true story. The scenario is based on a company that we'll refer to as the Cloud Alarm Company. Now, that's not their real name, but we do want to speak to you about some very real challenges that this company was experiencing, and Linda is going to show you how Intacct solved their financial management challenges and helped drive business value for them. Finally, I'm going to conclude today's session with some pointers to additional resources that you will find helpful in getting to know Intacct a little bit better. First, let me give you a quick introduction to Intacct. We are one of the fastest growing providers of cloud ERP solutions. We have over 11,000 organizations relying on our best-in-class cloud ERP solution as their financial system of record, relying on Intacct to automate processes and eliminate business challenges. Now, these companies represent organizations across a variety of industries and a variety of growth stages, from companies that are outgrowing their first accounting solutions to companies that are expanding rapidly to multiple locations, and to companies that have gone public on Intacct. one of the things that we pride ourselves on at Intacct is delivering exceptional customer satisfaction to our customers. At Intacct, we've built a culture on a foundation of customer success, and you'll see a cultural difference between Intacct and other solution providers. So what we want to do today, what Linda and I want to do today is show you what Intacct can do for your business. The kinds of business challenges that Intacct can help solve. We wanted to give you a closer look at Intacct, show you real examples of what the product can do and the results you can achieve. And we also want to answer any questions you have as well. Our overarching goal is to help you towards the best decision for your company. If your key finance processes are not running as smoothly as you'd like, either because your business has been growing quickly or has experienced some other rapid change, we want to give you enough information to help you evaluate whether replacing your current technology solution can be an effective way of addressing those challenges. And we thought the best way for you to understand what Intacct can do for you is through an example based on a true story. And so today, what we want to do is talk to you about the Cloud Alarm Company. Again, not their real name, but this is a true story of a customer that approached us with some specific business issues and financial management challenges that were being driven by those business changes. These are the challenges that they approached us with as they were experiencing tremendous growth. So the Cloud Alarm Company was a company and is a company that supplies finished surveillance equipment to businesses that sold and installed these security systems for end consumers. Now, when they approached Intacct, they were a multi-location organization with over 20 offices and 700 employees, and they were experiencing rapid growth beyond that as well. And so the starting point for Intacct's partnership with the Cloud Alarm Company was a discovery process. It was a process through which we learned about some significant business challenges they were experiencing. We learned that there was very little visibility for finance into transactions and performance across locations. Again, they had over 20 locations and they were growing. They had decentralized purchasing, no ability to answer customer questions about orders in a timely manner. They spent a lot of time in Excel creating reports. And what we learned was that these challenges were having an impact on their business by affecting their customer satisfaction scores, by slowing down timely decision making. So all of these process issues had top-level business impacts for them. And what they told Intacct, what they told us was they wanted the ability to see information for all of their locations in one system. They wanted automated workflows for purchasing approvals that would allow them to exert better control around vendor spend. They wanted the ability to meet new and changing reporting requirements very efficiently and better track sales orders as well. And the potential business impact that such an ideal solution could have was significant for the Cloud Alarm Company. They estimated that by getting more controls around purchasing, they could reduce spend by $50,000 with better access to order data. They could improve customer satisfaction by 10% in a relatively short time frame. And those benefits were just the beginning of the kinds of benefits they could experience by addressing their challenges with that ideal solution. And so our commitment to Cloud Alarm was twofold. First, with Intacct, we would make their business more efficient by automating processes, improving oversight and controls, increasing accuracy and compliance. We simply would make their business run better on a day-to-day basis. But in addition to that, our commitment was also to empower them to drive performance and growth. And like the financial managers at Cloud Alarm Company, many of you are probably being called on to do more than simply execute a process more efficiently. You're expected to provide information, valuable information, to run the business better, to make those decisions around strategy and operations. And so what we wanted to do for Cloud Alarm Company and for all of our customers is go beyond snapshots of dashboards and metrics and provide the ability to dig deeper into that data to understand why the business is performing the way it is. And so really efficiency plus growth. With Intacct, the Cloud Alarm Company got both of those things. And so what I'd like to do now is turn the floor over to my colleague Linda Pinion, and she is going to show you how we kept these commitments through the technology solution we were able to put into place for the Cloud Alarm Company. So Linda, the floor is now yours.
Thank you very much, Vijay. Just to reiterate a little bit before we jump into my section of the presentation, this is very typical of what we see and hear from our prospects. So today, as Vijay mentioned, this is in fact a true story that we hear, but it is a fictitious company. So let's learn a little bit more about the Cloud Alarm Company and what we discovered when we met with their team. Based on our discovery, we came back with 3 key areas that we wanted to focus on. The first area was around order to cash. And as Vijay mentioned, think about working with a company that has customer service reps. These are the folks that you're talking to first, perhaps when you call in and ask specific questions about your orders and invoices. And really what we're looking for here is an integrated automated process. The second area is procure to pay. And again, this varies for some companies as to what your process is. Today, we're going to look at a predefined automated process for the Cloud Alarm Company, and we're also going to look at some approval workflows. So that's what we'll be looking at in procure to pay. And then the third area is financial and operational intelligence. And this is really all about visibility. What Cloud Alarm Company wanted, if you remember, is the ability to have a friendly report writing tool and to get out of creating Excel spreadsheets. So let's take a look at order to cash first, and just to make sure that we know how they're working today at Cloud Alarm, we learned a couple of key points. One, that they don't have an integrated solution. And because of that solution not being integrated, they are touching and rekeying data multiple times. That, in turn, is resulting in errors and inaccuracies. We also know that because of all of that re-entering of data, the reporting is cumbersome and it's difficult for them to have much faith in what their reports are producing. Today, what you're going to see is an automated process outlined to match the way that orders and invoices get processed at Cloud Alarm. We're also going to address that very important metric around customer service and the customer satisfaction number. So we'll be looking at how we can streamline that process for the CSRs. Along the way, we'll also see that that information is being tracked in Intacct, and that historically it is giving them the visibility that they need to answer those questions, along with creating a dashboard specifically for their sales management team that's going to help them to have everything in one place. So let's move to taking a look at order to cash in Intacct and addressing these key issues for the Cloud Alarm Company. So moving into Intacct, before I address the order to cash scenario, this may be your first time to see Intacct. I'd like to introduce you to some key areas of the software so that you can see a little bit more about the infrastructure and how to navigate through the solution. Today, I'm going to be logged in as two different users. The first user that you see here is Joanna Drake, and she is the controller. And as the controller, she's designed a dashboard that when she logs in, it immediately shows her the dashboard with the information that's most important to her in her role. Now, everyone in your organization could have their own personal dashboard, and they can be different, and they can have permissions. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get into the reporting area of our story today. But just to note that Joanna is a super user, and as a super user, she has access to pretty much everything. So you'll notice here on her toolbar all the different applications that she can access, along with being able to navigate from what we call the drop-down menus. So if she wants to do something in accounts receivable, she's got a menu here that shows her the task, activities, and reports in this particular application. She also, because of her permissions, has access to the setup area. Now, this is an area that not everyone in your company will usually be granted permission, but in her case, being the controller, she can get to these setup files. Typically, you're setting these up initially and then just going back to them when you need to make a change or do some maintenance. So if she wanted to enter an invoice, all she'd need to do is to click on the invoice option here from the menu. Another way for her to navigate is from what we call the overview maps or the process maps. And you'll see me use these today. It's a great way, especially if you're new to Intacct, to understand what is going on in this particular area of the software. So here you're going to see the data elements, the tasks and activities that you do on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, and then you'll have a section for reports. This is all driven by an icon, so clicking on this icon is going to take you right to that place in the software, and you'll be able to go ahead and key in an invoice. So navigating from the drop-down menus, navigating from the process maps, and then last but not least, probably the most important way or easy way to navigate is with what we call our bookmarked menus. So think about when you're surfing the web and you want to save a favorite. This works exactly the same way in that you're bookmarking or saving a page and you're creating your own personal menu. You'll see me use this menu today because this is how I've set up my scenarios. It makes it very easy for me to move quickly through a process or through a defined flow without needing to menu travel or use the process maps. So all I need to do is to click on that option and it will take me right to that process map based on my personal menu. Now, a couple of other things that are important to know. As VJ mentioned, Cloud Alarm is a multi-location type organization. So for us today, we're going to be seeing all of those different locations as entities. Now, I've set up a few of them. I didn't set up all 20, but I've set up 4 of them here, and each one of these is a separate company. And what's important for you to take away is that this is one instance of Intacct, and it's managing 4 companies in this one instance. Also important to note is you can define as many companies or entities as you choose to manage, all in this one instance of Intacct, and we'll show you the reporting and the consolidation for that a little bit later. Also, permissions are by entity or company. So in this case, Joanna can transact in any one of those 4 companies. Now, just quickly to say a little bit about my second user, you'll notice right off this person has a different dashboard. They also have a different toolbar, and they also have access to only 2 of those 4 companies. So this is important because this is all about permissioning. Now I can control what access each user has, whether it's to a specific dashboard or to a specific company, and then we can get even more granular in our permissioning within an application. So these are the 2 folks I'm going to use. Joanna Drake is my controller. Drew Jackson is my employee, and that's a little bit about what navigation and the user experience looks like in Intacct. So back to our storyboard. We sat down with the customer service reps during discovery, and we listened to them take incoming phone calls from customers and in some cases from prospects. And we wanted to do this because we wanted to understand a little bit better what types of questions they were getting. So let's walk through that, put on your CSR hat, and let's take a look at the flow that we have defined for Cloud Alarm. So you'll notice in the middle of the process map there is a flow that starts with a sales quote, moves to a sales order, then goes through a fulfillment step, so you can think of this as the pick, pack, ship, and then moves to creating a sales invoice. Now, not always does Cloud Alarm create a sales quote, but they have that option. So they can start with a quote and then convert that to an order. Or they can start at a sales order step and not create a quote. It's totally optional. So what happens to them is they have these phone calls that come in, and most generally they can't answer the question, so they have to get back to the folks, they have to call back, they have to do research, they have to dig in the filing cabinets. With Intacct, let's talk about what would happen and how we would do this in an automated process flow. So one of the things that you are allowed to do in any of our lister screens is to be able to filter the data. So the first thing that happens is the customer says, Texas Alarm Systems, and I have a question about an invoice or an order. So the first thing I'm going to do as that CSR is I'm going to filter just to Texas Alarm because I want to get it down to just their information. And then based on perhaps a purchase order number, I can identify which order they're calling about. Once I've done that, I'm able to then go in and look at all of the information about that order. So if they're calling in and they're asking about the order, has that order in fact been shipped, or how is it being shipped, I have that information here. I know it's being shipped via UPS. I also have the ability to attach a picture. So if I want to talk about the items that they've ordered, I can come in and look at any attachments on this order. I know this looks a little scary, but this is a surveillance system. So this is the Defender surveillance system that they have ordered from Cloud Alarm. Additionally, I can see the item that has been ordered. I can see the warehouse that it's going to be shipped from, of course, the quantity and the price. In addition to that, there is more information that I can also look at. I can look at the specifics about the employee that took this order, and I can also utilize other dimensions for department and class and other attributes about this specific order. So dimensions are a way for us to tell the story of the transaction and be able to tag our transaction so that when we get to reporting, we can filter on one or more of these dimensions. So now that I've answered those questions for the Texas Alarm Company, they may have a question about being able to have a copy of this order. And from this screen, I have the ability to print or email directly just by filling out this screen, and it will automatically email a copy of this order directly to the person. In addition to being able to look at the sales order, I've also created a history tab. And this is probably the key to most questions that are asked by a customer. If they're asking about their sales order, I have it here, and I can drill back into that information. I also know the date, the time, and the user that took that order. In addition, if I'm asked questions about the shipping, I can come in and look at the shipping information. So now if I want to look to see how it was shipped, and perhaps if I have the UPS number, the tracking number, I can give them that information as well, along with the date that it shipped. So now I've answered questions about product, about shipping, and I also, of course, have those attachments with pictures. In addition to the shipping information, once this is invoiced, I have that information as well. So maybe someone is calling in and saying, I have a question about my invoice rather than I have a question about my order. And at this point, I have all of the information here, including the invoice number, again, the ability to print or email if they need a copy. Once there is a payment against this invoice, I will also have the payment details showing here on the screen. So I literally have everything from start to finish about this sales order and the process that it's gone through. Now, if by chance this order goes through multiple shipments, let's say that I can't ship everything on one invoice, I have to do 2 shipments, I will have both of those shipments here. I will have both of those invoices here. So this is a complete audit trail that gives me everything that I need to know. So that really answers several of the questions that the CSRs are getting from the customers. Now there's a couple of other questions that we sometimes get at Cloud Alarm, and that's around, do you have a certain quantity of a particular item? So we've also created a link to our inventory status report, and now I can look at a particular item, view that item, and see the details of how many I have on order, how many I've reserved, and my quantity available across all of my warehouses. So not only are we multi-company, we are multi-warehouse as well. Once I've identified that, I can drill back and I can see exactly all of the activity against this particular item in that specific warehouse. So full drill down capability. The other question that we heard was AR questions. So I'm calling about my account. I need to know something about a payment that I sent to you. Perhaps I want to check on an invoice. I have a question about that. So again, we've got an AR ledger link here where we can come in and we can look at all of the transactions either for the current month, or we can customize this and we can look for any reporting period that we choose to look at. And once we've done that, we have drill down to all of those transactions as well. So what we've done here is we've enabled our customer service reps to have everything at their fingertips. And having it at their fingertips means that they're not digging in the filing cabinet. They're answering those questions the first time, every time when the customer calls in. Now, again, along the way, we've captured lots of information, and this information we've now focused on a sales management dashboard. So this is kind of your first introduction to a dashboard. We'll see several of those today. This one has information about what a sales team might want to know, either about how they're doing, and that might mean just looking overall, who's performing the best, and that's what we see here, a revenue by entity graph. Or perhaps you want to look at some of the details, maybe sales analysis, so you have more detail into what you're selling, and perhaps what kind of margin you're making. Or perhaps the shipment history, another good report. In addition to those reports, there's a couple here that really help us look at our sales and how we're performing in a different light. One of them is to identify who our top customers are. So this is a report that we created based on what type of customer they are, and we've pushed it out to this sales manager's dashboard. In addition, we've put in a report that's called Sales by Square Foot, and we'll take a look at the details of this when we get to our reporting section. But this is a way for us to combine financial information and operational data together and to be able to see that information so that we can understand a little bit better, based on our square foot, how much revenue are we generating? Do we need more warehouses, less warehouses? How does that impact what our revenue number is? So these are all reports and statuses that we've pushed out to this dashboard, making it very easy for our sales team to have this information in one place at their fingertips. So let's come back and let's take, VJ, any open questions just before I jump into the next section?
Yes, Linda, there is one. The question is, do we have to enter orders in Intacct? We use Salesforce. Can Intacct work with Salesforce?
Oh, that's a great question. And by the way, Cloud Alarm was looking at Salesforce. It was not something on their radar screen today. However, we did talk a little bit about it because it was great to get that planning and that strategy into the solution. Salesforce is, in fact, a connector that does integrate with Intacct. So in that process, rather than starting in Intacct and entering either an order or a quote, you could start that process in Salesforce. Now, the touch point there in that connector is at the opportunity level. So what would happen is whatever was in the opportunity, so whatever products or items, as we call them, are on that opportunity, all that information gets created in a sales order on the Intacct side, and then it also feeds back to Salesforce. So whether you're a Salesforce user or an Intacct user, you will have visibility to that information. So when I'm talking to Texas Alarm and I'm looking at their Salesforce record, I can see those sales orders, I can see the sales invoices, I can see the shipments. I have a view into the Intacct or financial information from the Salesforce side.
Great. No other questions for now.
Okay, great. So let's move to the second area, which is procure to pay. And this will go a little bit faster in that if you think about some of the user experience, the navigation, the automated workflow, this is really much of the same. We're just on the other side of the table. Now, instead of the sales side, we're on the purchasing side. Here's what we know about how Cloud Alarm was handling their procure-to-pay area. First of all, we had all these different companies and locations out there, and everybody got to do whatever they wanted to in the way of purchasing with no accountability. We also found that gave us much of a data reentry. So we're reentering data. We're touching it multiple times. We also don't have a clue how much we're spending. There's no control. There's no approval process. So we don't have an idea of what we're spending. And then one of the other things that came out of this discussion was the fact that because every location is buying, they don't really have a good vendor relationship. So they're buying from a lot of vendors. They're not able to take advantage of volume discounting and pricing because everybody's buying a little bit. Nobody's buying a large quantity. So what we want to look at today is, again, one of those automated processes. So we want to automate this and streamline it. We also want to gather the information as we go to make sure that we know which vendors we're working with, which ones are performing in a good manner, which ones are delivering on time. And then we also want to get control of the spend. And the way that we're going to do that is by utilizing the predefined approval workflow in Intacct. And that's going to help really set the stage for making sure that every time we spend money, it is an authorized spend. So let's take a look at how that's going to work in Intacct in the Procure to Pay area. So again, let's start off by looking at our overview map. And again, this is a way for you to be able to visually look at your business process. Now, there's one other thing I want you to notice on this process map, and that is that there's a couple things here that are grayed out. And I point this out because this goes back to our earlier discussion around permissions. So when you set permissions for a user, you'll have the ability to grant them or deny them access. And in this case, Joanna does not have permission to split or merge transactions, nor can she do a return shipment. So those are two things that are grayed out here, and that's what your permissions would look like if you had them turned off. Now, the flow that we've defined here starts with a requisition. And this is something that Cloud Alarm had not used very much in the past. They really start most everything with a purchase order. But because of this wanting to control spend, we looked at starting out with a requisition based on a dollar amount of what they were ordering. They start with a requisition. It goes through a workflow approval process, and then that gets converted, once it's approved, into a purchase order. From that point, because we're wanting to track performance on these vendors and we want to know what's going on when they're late and that sort of thing, we want a formal receiving of this material, and also because we have multiple warehouses. So we're going to go through a receiving step. We're going to do that electronic matching to make sure we got the right item, we got the right quantity. And then the last step here is creating a vendor invoice. Again, this is doing this electronically, matching it with the vendor invoice to make sure that we have gotten billed correctly. So any of those variances we can track, we can handle, based on how we've set up our business flow. So let's take a look at how that process would work. Now, keeping in mind that the way Cloud Alarm wanted to do their purchasing is they still wanted these locations or these other companies to be able to create those requisitions, but they wanted an approval from corporate. So to do that, we're going to start with our employee user. So this is Drew Jackson. Remember, Drew's a little bit different because he doesn't have all the same capabilities as Joanna. But what he does have the ability to do is to create a requisition. So here in purchasing, he has a very limited menu, but he can create that purchase requisition and submit it for approval. Now, I've gone ahead and created one today. So let me show you what I've created. I've submitted it. And you can see out here that it does have a status of submitted. So let's take a look at this requisition so that you can get a feel for how this would work. So we've got a requisition out to our supplier here, our vendor, by the name of Defender. And we've put a note here, a reference that we're replenishing for July. We've also asked for it to be shipped via UPS. Here's the item that we're ordering. It's that surveillance system. And again, you have the ability to attach pictures or documents. And those will stay with the transaction historically, so forever and always. This is the warehouse I want this material to come into, so our warehouse 10. and I'm ordering 100 of these at $350. And I do have the ability to set up purchasing price list as well as sales price list. So I've set this up as a $350 item, and it's done the math for me. Again, I have that same capability to tag this transaction to those dimensions that we talked about. So this is in a particular location, a particular department, and I've tagged it with Drew Jackson as the employee that has requested this. Now, when Drew entered this and submitted it, workflow kicked off, and the approval engine sent an email to the approver. And you can have multiple approvers. In this case, I only am asking one person to approve it. Once you get that email, you'll be able to approve it from the email, or if, in the case of Joanna, you're in the office, you can approve it from your purchasing screen. So put on your purchasing hat, and let's take a look at how we would approve that purchasing transaction. So here you'll see that Joanna gets the document, so she can drill into the document, and if I was Joanna, I would want to do that. So here's the transaction. It's the requisition. Again, she could look at the picture if she chose to, so she knows exactly what it is that Drew wants to be ordered. She can also come in and look at the approval history. So now she could see if there were any other folks that needed to approve it besides herself. And once she's looked at it and made her determination, she's either going to approve or decline it. And either way, whether she approves or declines, she has the ability to put in messages or comments. And once she hits the button, it's going to send an email to Drew. And Drew's going to know the status of his requisition. So he'll know his requisition in this case has been approved, and it's moved on to purchasing. So put your purchasing hat on, and once that requisition has been approved, we now have the ability to convert it. Now, converting it is going to move it to the next step in the process. So if you go back to the process map, what you will remember is we're starting out with a requisition, and then we're going to move to a purchase order. So I'm going to take this requisition, and I'm going to convert it to a purchase order. Now, important perhaps in your organization is the fact that you can have different kinds of purchase orders. This is just a normal, regular purchase order. It's not a blanket. It's just a regular purchase order. So we'll convert that. And where this really helped the Cloud Alarm was the fact that they didn't need to rekey any information. So everything that was on the requisition came over to populate the purchase order. And at this point, they could put in some additional notes. They could put in a different quantity based on if they have permission to do that. If they can edit this, that's a permission-based type of option. If everything's good to go, we'll go ahead and get that posted up because we're going to send that out to Defender. And Defender is going to fulfill that. And when they fulfill it, they're going to send it to us. We're going to receive it in to our warehouse. We're going to make sure that we got the right item and that we got 100 in the quantity. So we're electronically matching it. And then a few days after we get the material, we'll get their invoice. And once we have their invoice, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to match that up electronically, only this time we're matching to make sure that we got billed correctly. So we're matching to the $35,000. Any variances, as I mentioned earlier, any variances between the quantity and the dollars, we'll capture those variances because that's how we're going to get those vendor performance reports at the end. So once we've done that, we'll go ahead and get that posted up. And at this point, I've got an error, and I want to explain this because this is important for you to understand how Intacct is going to make sure that all the information that's required, you are putting that information in. So right now it's telling me that I have some required information, customer billing number, and it's not being populated, so it's not going to let me post the transaction. So if we come back here and we look at that information, we basically can come in and we can input that information so that we can go ahead and get this posted up. So once we do that and we post it, we'll go ahead and have that information noted on our invoice, and we'll be able to get the document posted. So once we've posted that information, we then have the information about that transaction. We have all of the history, and we'll be able to see the requisition, the purchase order, the receiver, and the vendor invoice. Just the same way that we saw it on the sales side, we have it now on the purchasing side. The date, the time, and the user that performed that transaction. And then once we have that, we can drill back into any piece of that information, and we can talk to our vendor about it, or we can talk to our internal requisitioner, in this case, Drew. If he had a question, we could be talking to him about this invoice. So now that we know how we can automate that process and we can control the spend by way of workflow approvals, let's go to the next step, which is looking at the purchasing dashboard. And the dashboard here is all designed for the purchasing team. So just the same way we did it for the sales side of the house, we're doing it now for purchasing. We've got an area that talks about the approved vendors. We've also got some of that performance information around how a vendor is performing. We've got a variance report, again, noting when they are not shipping us exactly what we ordered. In addition to that, we may want to have a graph to know how our vendor aging looks, or perhaps look at our receipt history on a monthly basis, or in this case, a quarter-to-date basis. So all of this information is available to our purchasing team, which is going to help them be better, smarter buyers. So let's come back. Any open questions about procure to pay that I can answer, Vijay, before we move to our final section?
Yeah, Linda, there's one question here. Are we required to use workflow approval when we initially implement, or can we add it at a later time?
You are not required to make that decision day one. You can turn on workflow approval anytime you choose to. And you can also, of course, go in yourself as a business user with permission and change that workflow approval. Perhaps you want to make it more in-depth, or you want to change who the approvers are. Perhaps you want to look at changing it up not just on a document, but perhaps on a dollar amount. So all of that is designed for you to create and maintain, and you can do it day one or you can do it day 999.
Great. Thanks, Linda.
Okay, great. All right, so our last section, you've seen a little bit of what we're going to cover here, but we're going to focus on some other areas around financial reporting and visibility. What we know at Cloud Alarm is that you're rekeying a lot of information and you're going outside of your system today and creating reports in Excel. And we all know that Excel is a great application, but of course that leads to some errors and some out-of-date information. So what you're going to see in Intacct is more of the dashboards, but we're going to look at some other areas of the dashboard so that you have that clear, comprehensive business insight. Not only the financial information, we're also going to look at financial and operational data together, which is going to give you a different way to track how you're performing. We're also going to go back and reintroduce you to dimensions and how dimensions feed all of your reporting and analysis. So let's go ahead and come back into Intacct and take a look at reporting. And to do that, let's come into the controller dashboard first. You've seen the purchasing dashboard. You've seen the sales dashboard. Now let's talk a little bit about what does Joanna need to see. So at a top level, there's some key business insight that she wants to see pretty much every day and multiple times during the day. So to put those things on her dashboard, she's decided to incorporate them into what we call performance cards. Performance cards are a way for you to group accounts together so that you can have that quick view of what's going on, perhaps as it relates to revenue or, as in her case, net income. Or maybe you want to look at expenses. And without running a report, you can just see immediately how you're doing and perhaps compare that to a previous month or a previous period. What's also important is that you have drill downs. So for Joanna, this helps her to know because she can compare this month with last month. Now it's early in this month, so she knows that some of that information hasn't come in yet. But she can immediately see that there is, in fact, a difference here between the monthly rent that came in last month versus this month. She can drill into that transaction, and she can see that it's a $6,900 bill. Looks like it was split across all 4 companies. She can drill a little deeper, and she can see exactly how this information got keyed into accounts payable. She knows it's not paid. You can see that here. She also can see the split of how it was split across the 4 different companies. And by the way, we can help you with that split by setting up an allocation template. What she also has access to do is to use something called Intacct Collaborate. And this is a way for her to communicate. In this case, she sent a message to Drew Jackson down here at the bottom, sent a couple of messages to him because she wanted to understand more about why the invoice had gone up by $1,000 from the previous month. This information that she keyed in here went directly to Drew, and without creating an email, she was able to communicate to him about this particular transaction. What's also great about this is that communication is tied directly to that invoice, and she has drill down capability to that invoice from her dashboard. So we'll take a look at that in just a moment. So again, drill down into all of this data and being able to look at it without having to go to the filing cabinet or run any other reports. Now, here is that Intacct Collaborate feed, and it's right here on the dashboard. And you'll notice that I have a hot link right into that AP bill. So now if I have a question about it, I can drill into that bill. Here it is. I have all of the conversations recorded here, and historically they're there forever and always. So coming back to the dashboard, there are other reports and graphs out here that Joanna wants to look at, and some of those reports are a standard income statement, balance sheet, full drill down capability. So when we look at this income statement, we see all 4 companies side by side. We see some conditional shading based on some rules that I've set up. And again, drill down to any of this information. What I also have the ability to do is to filter this data. So now I can filter it by 1 or more of these dimensions. So as an example, if I only wanted to look at the Texas entity, I could certainly do that, and it will take that same report and filter it down to just Texas. In this case, they have 2 locations in Texas that they're splitting out, Austin and Dallas, that roll into the Texas area, and now I have the complete view of Texas, full drill down, conditional shading, all applies to the same report. I've just taken it and filtered it by that dimension. So understanding that all of these reports can be filtered, they can be executed right here from your desktop from the dashboard. In addition, we talked a little bit about a report around operational data, and this is a way for you to capture operational data and include that with financial data to give you a different view. So for the cloud alarm company, it was sales by square foot. What we've done is we've set up square foot as a statistical account in Intacct. We've entered a statistical journal entry. We've then created a report where we've pulled in the sales, done the math against the square footage, and come up with sales by square foot. We put this in a monthly bucketed report, gives you the ability to look back in previous months and see how you're tracking. Any operational data can be tracked in this manner. Now, all of this information is coming from the reporting center, and the reporting center is that central repository that allows you to house all of your reports in one place. So here is that report that we had on the dashboard, that income statement. You have the ability to print it, to view it, to push it out to a PDF format, and also to set it up on the Intacct scheduler. Setting it up on the scheduler allows you to set it up to run unattended in the background based on a start and end date, a frequency, and a delivery list. What's also important to note is that you will be able to create as many financial reports as you choose to. Intacct's going to provide you with about 30 reports, standard reports. In addition, you can copy any of the financial reports, so you can duplicate them. That's the fastest way to create a new report. You'll follow these 8 steps along the side here, including being able to define the filters. So how do you want to filter by those dimensions, and setting permissions. And this is a way for you to build out an unlimited amount of financial reports. There's also one other report writer here in Intacct, and that is the custom report writer. And it's the one that allows you to create reports across the subsystems. It is a report writer that is a little bit different. It's driven by a wizard, and it's going to step you through a number of steps to create a custom report across any of those applications like accounts receivable or accounts payable. So here's the wizard designed for the business user. And at Cloud Alarm, this is what was key to them, being able to create reports themselves, not having to have IT create those reports. So again, everything in English, all designed for the business user. So 2 report writers, both native to Intacct, both allowing you to create as many reports as you choose to, and then housing them here in the report center. So let's take a look back at what we've covered today and answer any final questions. So in our session today, we started out with order to cash, and we looked at an integrated automated process. Our goal was to help our customer service reps answer those questions first time, every time, empower them to have the information at their fingertips without needing to go and dig in the filing cabinet. We're looking to increase that customer sat number. In the procure-to-pay area, we looked at how can we help control spend. So we looked at turning on our workflow approvals and understanding what we had created purchase transactions for by having the visibility in the dashboard and by also tracking how our vendors were performing. And then last, we looked at financial and operational intelligence. And we really just scratched the surface here. With Intacct, you'll have 150 reports that will be available to you day one. They are ones that Intacct has created for you. 30 of those are financial. 120 are across the subsystems. You will also be able to create unlimited financial reports and custom reports using those reporting tools. And you'll also be able to take advantage of not only financial data but operational data as well, and utilize the dimensions to help filter the data so that you can get reports out at a very granular level based on one or more of the 8 predefined dimensions in Intacct. So Vijay, any final questions that I can answer before we wrap up?
No, Linda, we have reached the top of the hour. So what I'd like to do is leave the audience today with a couple of points. One is, if we haven't been able to answer your question live, we will definitely be following up with you afterwards to get your questions answered. Second, I wanted to point you to some additional resources that you can leverage to learn a little bit more about Intacct. We do have additional webinars and product tours if you're interested in digging in a little deeper on any of the areas that we've covered today. And finally, I just wanted to conclude on behalf of both Linda and myself and Intacct with a thank you. Thank you for taking time out of your day to be with us. As you exit the product tour today, please again do fill out the survey. And both Linda and I wish you a great rest of the day. Thanks again.